I want you guys to understand something. When when people ask you for demands about what they want, what they need, one of the main ones we hear about all the time is having emotional intelligence. I want a partner, I want a friend, I want people who I generally interact with on a daily basis, weekly basis, just more often than not, to have a certain amount of fundamental EQ or emotional intelligence, right? We hear about this all the time. What people don't understand is conceptually, all these ideas have roots, right? They're concepts. A more scientifically accurate term for it would be a hypothesis. It has to go through a process of falsifiability, right? Now, what I'm going to share here is a short clip of Daniel Goleman explaining the idea of emotional intelligence and where it actually comes from, where he got the idea from, right? I want you to hear it in his own words. I was going to say it and I was going to actually explain it, but I said, nah, I'll let this guy explain it in his own words. And we're going to talk about whether or not the people who inherently ask for these things, constantly ask for these things, actually understand the concept to begin with. If they do, we're going to break down each orientation of the idea and see if they're consistent with these people's behavior. And if they don't, we're going to examine why that actually is. Now, I'm going to try to make this video as short as possible. And so I'll show the clip right now.
Emotional intelligence refers to how well we handle ourselves and our relationships. There are four domains. Self-awareness, knowing what we're feeling, why we're feeling it, which is a basis of, for example, good intuition, good decision making. Also, it's a moral compass. The second part is self-management, which means handling your distressing emotions in an effective way so that they don't cripple you, they don't get in the way of what you're doing, and yet attuning them to them when you need to so that you learn what you must. Every emotion has a function. Also, marshaling positive emotions, getting ourselves, involved, enthused about what we're doing, aligning our actions with our passions. The third is empathy, knowing what someone else is feeling. And the fourth is putting that all together in skilled relationship. So that's what I mean by emotional intelligence. There are many definitions out there. The part of the brain, it turns out, that it supports emotional and social intelligence is actually the last circuitry of the brain to become anatomically mature. And because of neuroplasticity, the brain shapes itself according to repeated experience. You have to remember that emotional intelligence is a range of abilities: self-awareness, emotional self-management, empathy, social skills. Women tend to be better than men on average at empathy, particularly emotional empathy, sensing in the moment how the other person is feeling. And also it's at social skills, at keeping things feeling good between people and a group. Men, on the other hand, tend to be better on average at self-confidence, particularly in groups, and at managing distressing emotions.
So Mr. Daniel Goleman broke down how he sees EQ. I would suggest getting the book. It's a good book. I'm pretty sure you can find it free on YouTube or a Google PDF file or something like that. But the things he broke down: social skills, empathy, self-management, self-awareness. Do you think the average person has these kind of soft skills? Do you think they exhibit them in very proximatized relationships? Absolutely not. They don't. They do not. And normally, that would be par for the course if it wasn't for the fact that the very same people who have these demands that you have the highest EQ in the world, are the ones committing these same violations, these same contradictions. Oh, you got to have emotional intelligence to deal with me. The whole time, in the course of conflict, when the real social skills are tested, when all of the things you claim you learned from your past relationships are tested, you find out these people haven't learned anything. In the meta-analysis of EQ, Daniel Goleman also delves into meta-awareness, the fact that you should be aware that you're aware, right? The average person doesn't have these kind of skills. And he also talked about it not necessarily being innate. It's something that you have to learn because we're so self-absorbed, right? We have something deep within us that's millions of years of genetic development that is essentially self-preservation, that we're always going to think about ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's going to always be an emphasis and conflict in relationship where you're going to have to get the word in. Your feelings are always going to have to be at the forefront, even if that's contradictory to EQ. And as I said, this wouldn't be an issue if it weren't for the fact that people are always saying, "Oh, you need EQ, you need EQ, you need emotional intelligence." So I like to ask people, what do you think emotional intelligence is? Oftentimes they'll give you some cockamamie answer, something that has absolutely nothing to do with the idea, nothing to do with it. I akin this to not necessarily the concept Daniel Goleman came up with. Well, he didn't actually come up with it. He just he did meta-analysis on it. Like I said, read the book. He'll tell you his sources. So I akin this to astrology. There's absolutely no scientific evidence to support the concept of astrology, and when you really think about it, it's a very hobbyist concept, right? There's nothing scientific about it on its own head. So when somebody tells you, "Oh, I'm a Libra," or "You're a Libra," or "You're a Pisces, so you have to fit personality X," or "You're a Scorpio, so you have to fit personality B," I always like to ask them questions. Always remember, guys, form everything you want to say, especially if it's a comment, and especially if it's a little aggressive. Not aggressive, but if it's challenging, you're challenging somebody. Always use it in the form of a question because it puts extra onus back on that person. So I can people who claim that you need to have emotional intelligence to deal with them, with the concept of people who claim you need to fit astrology type X to deal with them. We know astrology has a history. We know where it came from, and we have tons of historical references for these things, and we know it's not scientific at all. And in order for people to realize that, the same people who say they don't, that you're not a Scorpio, so I can't. You're a Scorpio, I can't deal with you. You have to ask these people questions. You have to ask them questions and ask them why they believe in these sort of things. The same way we would when somebody asks, "Well, why do I have to have emotional intelligence? Do you have emotional intelligence? Well, what do you think it is?" Most likely they're going to give you a wrong answer. I mean, according to Daniel Goleman and the references he got it from, they're going to give you a wrong answer. Why do people do this? This is nothing but learned language behavior. That's all it is. People hear things repetitiously and they repeat it and they repeat it and their successors repeat it, and it becomes a social group talking point, right? So guys, we have to get away from this. We have to understand where these concepts come from. This is why it's important to always ask questions. When people say, "Well, you got to have emotional intelligence," show them the clip of Daniel Goleman explaining exactly what it is and ask them, do they have these characteristics? Are you self-aware? Of course they're going to say they are. Ask them to give you the last example of what they believe was self-awareness in action, IRL, in real life. What does their self-management look like? Ask them that. When was the last time you exhibited stellar self-management in real time? What does their empathy look like? Mr. Goleman broke down, or should I say Dr. Goleman broke down the differences between men and women, how it suited out on average with their emotional intelligence. He talked about women having more empathy than men, being aware when someone else was in an emotional duress, right? But he also talked about how men had more confidence and were able to manage the emotions a little bit better. I want you guys to think about that. I want y'all to think about that. Because oftentimes, not to be controversial, but we hear women saying this the most. You have to be emotional intelligent. They come up with these concepts the most. Now, I'm sure men do it too. I'm sure they say it to their potential suitors as well. But women oftentimes come up with these concepts, these ideas of what they want. And the whole time, they lack it themselves because, as I said, it's a learned trait. It's not something that you innately have, no matter how much you say you have intuition, which isn't really falsifiable scientifically. I don't think women have any more intuition than the next child or man. I just think that people overall make good decisions and sometimes they make bad decisions. And depending on your environment and other social and economic factors, people are more prone to make good or bad decisions, right? But these are the main ones demanding this. So the next time, man or woman, asks you to display emotional intelligence, or you have to display emotional intelligence to deal with them, ask them, well, what's emotional intelligence? Well, why do you have it any more than I do? You know? And if you're already in a relationship with this person and you already have some kind of relationship with this person, whether friend, family, or a lover, give me some examples of you exhibiting self-awareness, self-management, empathy, right? I can guarantee you they'd be hard-pressed to find a time where they exhibited these behaviors, right? 8 times out of 10, they fall short. I just wanted to break this down real quick. I just wanted to talk about this idea. That's what this channel is for. I always want to introduce concepts and see if we're consistent with these concepts in real time. How does what we say match up with what we do? All right? I'll see y'all next time.